Good day to all our viewers. Welcome to the International and Domestic Virtual Colloquium or COMAT 2023 organized by the Institute of Teacher Education, International Languages Campus, Kuala Lumpur, better known as IPGKBA, Malaysia. I'm Noraimo Abdullah, your moderator for today. Ladies and gentlemen, COMAT 2023 brings to you 18 series of individual webinars with speakers from Malaysia and abroad. And this is the 14th series of our virtual session. Optimizing future-proof education is the theme for this year. We hope educators from all over the world will use the space and platform to discuss, share, and exchange views on topics related to future education and how it is transformed globally and the way forward in practice and implementation. Indeed, plenty of exponential knowledge for us to explore, to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So stay tuned with us to the end of the session, and we are live on YouTube channel and EduWeb TV. Before we engage with our speaker for the day, allow me to share a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, everyone who attends the webinar series can download your e-certificate from the COMAT 2023 cert site after the end of the session. Therefore, do register your name, make sure it is typed correctly, and your email address is accurate. For viewers joining us from the Ministry of Education Malaysia, or better known as KPM, your attendance will be recorded in SPL KPM, and the registration link will be shared about 30 minutes into the webinar. Secondly, ladies and gentlemen, we would love to hear from you during this presentation. And if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the chat box. The speaker will be answering your questions at the end of the session. If your questions is not attempted, we will surely do a follow-up. And finally, we would like to encourage you, and it's very much appreciated for you to share today's webinar with others through your social networks. Now, allow me to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Adam Abdul Malik. Dr. Adam Abdul Malik holds a Bachelor of Health Science in Exercise and Sports Science, a Master of Science in Sports Science, and a Doctorate in Sports and Health Science. Currently, he is serving the School of Health Sciences at University Science Malaysia, Kubang Krian, Kelantan. Kelantan is a beautiful place, ladies and gentlemen. For those who are abroad, make sure you come and visit us in Malaysia. He holds the Exercise and Sports Sciences program at this moment. His research interest is on HIIT, which stands for High Intensity Interval Training, with several postgraduate research and publications under his belt, namely, effects of HIIT on perceptual responses, effects of HIIT with different protocols on training load, perceptual responses and cortisol levels, and the use of effect responses for exercise intensity regulations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is beneficial for everyone to adopt a healthy over a sedentary lifestyle. In context of schools, it is ideal for pupils to embrace an active, energetic, and sporty lifestyle, even for us as educators and teachers in schools. For a healthy body breeds a healthy mind, brings about healthy emotions, and sustains general well-being, thus making way for more robust and rigorous learning. But how do we go about changing the mindset and re-engineer the practices of physical activities in schools by teachers to achieve these ideals? A great challenge, perhaps, and a question perhaps with elusive answers, and we hope to get some answers at the end of the session. So with this, if everyone is ready, let's pump up the volume for today's topic. Go on your mark, get set, and go. Let's gather some insights on the role of high-intensity interval exercises as an alternative physical activity, coined as PA, a strategy to improve PA among children. With this in mind, let's welcome Dr. Adam Abdul Malik. The floor is yours, Dr. Adam.
All right. Thank you, the moderator. Assalamualaikum and good morning, everyone. I hope that everyone can hear my voice clearly. All right. So as for today, as mentioned by the moderator, today I would like to share some of my viewpoints related to, of course, the physical educations in the context of our Malaysians. Okay. So first and utmost, I would like to thank the organizer of this colloquium for invitations, and I feel very honored and privileged to be part of this great colloquium. Okay. All right. Okay. So for today sessions, my topic will be the on your mark and get set go. So typically, this is a command given by the empire actually for the athletes to start with something, of course, with the event. So basically, this particular topic is reflecting the overall direction of my presentation today. So in specifics, I would like to bring forward the philosophy of taking high intensity interval exercise to school. It's the same term, high intensity interval training or high intensity interval exercise. So for me, I'm using the terms high intensity interval exercise. Okay. So just a brief introduction of myself. Basically, I can skip a few parts for my education background. So my expertise is under exercise training. and also exercise psychophysiology. And for my PhD, I've been working closely with the school children in UK by implementing the high intensity interval trainings in a school-based setting. Okay, I've been working with almost hundreds school children during my PhD candidature. Apart from my academic line, I'm also actively work with the student athlete as a coach, track event coach. Okay, I'm also as an expert panel for sports science coaching course curriculum for level 1, 2, and 3, and also the instructor for the National Sport Council. Some of us call as ISN, under the specific area which is strength and conditioning and sport injuries. I'm also I'm so used to work as a physical education teacher for almost 1.5 years after my undergraduate, and also I'm working as a science officer in advanced medical and dental institutions under a cluster of healthy lifestyles. So based on my experience, I hope that our sessions today will bring benefits to all of us, and I will try to put my point of view and also based on the evidence that has been made from my investigations and also from my teammate in UK. Okay. Okay, so for the purpose of today's presentation, I created a framework as a presentation of overview for today to steer the direction of today's presentations. So basically, there is a 3 part of my presentation. So at the first part, I will establish the issue related to health by focusing on the overweight and obese among school children in Malaysia. And also, I will try bring forward some information and evidence related to the prevalence of physical inactivity among children and adolescents in Malaysia. And I believe, as a researcher and also as a public servant, I think this is not our something new to us. Every and now we have received all the information related to the data, whether this is a good or bad to us. Okay, and then after I establish the questions, or after I establish the evidence related to this related issue and the prevalence of physical activity, this will lead to my questions. Okay, does current physical education session in school provide sufficient amount of physical activity among school children in Malaysia? So from this part, I hope that this will be our key or core discussion for today's presentations, whether our current physical education lessons could provide sufficient amount of physical activity. And because of my research and also based on my expertise, I bring forward some of the potential strategy that might able to facilitate the issue related to the health-related issue and also prevalence of physical activity by integrated the HIIT into the physical education lesson in school. All right. Okay, according to the National Health and Mobility Survey, it's a current survey that has been made in 2019. The report has been came out in 2019. The prevalence of children and adolescents obesity in Malaysia has inclined exponentially from 5.4% in 2006 to 6.1% in 2011, and almost double to 11.9% in 2015 and 14.8% in 2019. We are waiting for the 2022 data, but currently it's ongoing process. They are still in a data analysis, and I'm not surprised to see more increase in number in terms of the prevalence of children and adolescent obesity. So this survey was conducted across state in Malaysia, and this is the third version of the National Health and Mobility Survey. Okay, all right. So according to WHO, I think this is not something that we want to happen actually. So we are the second highest in Asia to have a child obese in Malaysia. even though we are not very good in some sport, but I don't think this is a good news for us, okay, because we are the second highest in Asians classified as a obesity in our children and adolescents. If we compare to other countries across the Asians, Southeast Asians, we are second. If you look at the adult data, we are the first, we are the highest, the top highest in Asians. And as I mentioned just now in my first slide, I believe that if this continue, the trends continue, I believe that we can surpass the Brunei as the top highest in Asia. I hope that we will not go for that scenario. Okay, all right. So alarmingly, the Southeast Asian Nutrition Study by SAINS 2 revealed that the rise in childhood obesity in many countries has surpassed adult obesity, including in Malaysia. So as mentioned just now, if we put 5 or 6 years in future, I don't think we should put some effort or strategy to make sure that this will not happen. Okay, and also this is the biggest issue aside for the COVID-19. Some of the researchers also call the obesity as an epidemic, and sometimes as a pandemic. Okay, all right. So what will be the issue if we have increased number of childhood obesity, especially in our country, Malaysia? So according to the Siegel and Sanchez 2001, overweight or obese children have a greater risk of growing up to become overweight or obese adults. In specific, after an obese child reaches 6 years of age, the probability of getting obesity in their adulthood exceeds 50% and 70 to 80% of obese adolescents. So meaning that children and adolescents is a critical period for the intervention, especially the exercise or any kind of interventions to make sure that this will not persistent and happen in future. So obesity overweight is associated with significant morbidity and mortality. Mortality is a rate of death, and morbidity is something related with the diseases, including facing a greater risk of developing multiple chronic disease. For example, hypertension, diabetes, and disease. Often we heard that nowadays our young children already having the chronic disease like adult one. So this is no longer the adult version of the diseases. So our future kids may probably facing this kind of issue. As many as 8 of 10 obese students could have at least one of the above diseases or medical conditions. Okay, so this is a very alarming situation, especially for us as parents, as educators. Okay, and also the consequences is poor academic performance. When we compare, based on the research, when we compare the normal weight individual or students or pupils compared to the obese and overweight, person or individual who with obese and overweight poor in academic performance. Okay, and also in terms of psycho problems, for obese and overweight children are more likely than their healthy weight peers to have various related psychosocial, including bullying. I think every one of us have experience to see this, even with observations. So this has been proved by the research that with this kind of situations, it also can impact the students' psychosocial problem, and it leads to more depression and stress among children and adolescents. Okay, so before we go further to the next phase, so we need to know first what is the contributing factor that lead to the childhood obesity, overweight and obese. Okay, so here I put 4 contributing factors, but actually we have more than that. But for this particular session, I limit to these 4. Okay, the most common factors that have been reported by the research. Okay, there are 4. First is physical inactivity, poor dietary intake, environmental, and family. As I mentioned in my previous slides, for those who has parents who are obesity, the probability that they get having this kind of issue of overweight will be higher, greater. Okay, and the physical activity and poor dietary intake is the most factors that have been discussed and has been investigated in terms of how to intervene this childhood obesity, because these two factors can be modified. So we call this as a modified risk factor. And of course, the environmental, for example, the change of the transportations, the screening view is all factors that contribute to the childhood obesity. But as mentioned just now, for this purpose of presentations, I will limit to the physical activity. All right. So before we go to the issue or the current findings or trends related to the physical activity of children and adolescents, first I would like to establish and share the very, very important information related to recommendations of children and adolescents. I believe that some of you are aware about these recommendations provided by the WHO and also by our Ministry of Health in Malaysia. So across a country or in globally, we use the same recommendations for children and adolescents for the age of 5 to 17 years old. If we are sick, if you go to the doctor, of course they will give a specific dose. In exercise, we also have a specific dose that need to be achieved by the children and adolescents. Children and adolescents are recommended to achieve a minimum of 16 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity physical activity per day. So meaning that if the children and adolescents do not achieve a minimum of 60 minutes, that particular individual or children and adolescents is considered as a physically inactive. Okay, so I hope that you can log the time, the duration, because we will use the time as the indicator why there's a lot of research into regarding the HIIT, high intensity interval exercise or training. Okay, so the question will raise whether our school children can achieve the 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous intensity. Okay, so based on the current finding also from the National Health Mobility Survey in 2019, Malaysia showed that more than half of children and adolescents did not participate in sufficient physical activity. So what does it mean by sufficient? Meaning that they did not achieve the 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity, and they were classified as having low physical activity levels. As I mentioned just now, physical activity is the contributing factor or predictor of the obesity and overweight in children and adolescents in Malaysia. And the most recent finding, okay, led by the UKM team, the 2022 Active Healthy Kids Report Card revealed that Malaysia children and adolescents have low level of physical activity. They got the grade of D minus. It's considered as failed. Okay, so this is the most recent findings from the 2020 Active Healthy Kids Report Card. Right, so there's a consistency in terms of evidence. If I give more and more evidence, I believe that there's a consistency in terms of consensus that our children is less active. For example, this one, Lee et al., even though this is 2018, again, Malaysian children recorded low physical activity level and high sedentary behavior, spending an average of 6.7 hours daily in sedentary activities. So sedentary activities is meaning that the screening time, the sitting time, okay, the lying time is much more higher compared to the waking hours. Okay. Moreover, only 15% of children achieve the recommended pedometer count of 13 steps per day. So this is the indicator. If we use the pedometer, this is a cutoff point to indicate whether our children or adolescents considered as active or not. So pedometer is the equipment used to quantify the physical activity among children and adolescents. So this data signifying that a high proportion of school children were physically inactive. Okay, so there is a consistency in terms of the negative trends of overweight and obese in Malaysia and also in physical activity. Also, I bring some more data regarding the physical activity status in Malaysia based on global school-based student health survey. Data shows a worrying pattern of 15.3% girls and 30.2% boys aged 13 to 17 years meeting physical activity recommendation. Whereas also more than 48.5% girls and 46.4% boys reporting spending than 3 hours a day in sedentary activity. Is more than half, almost half of the girls and boys spending in sedentary activities. So this is all the negative healthy lifestyles that has been doing by our children and adolescents. And of course, with the increasing in terms of changing in the transportation mode, enhancement in the technologies in terms of smartphone. So this will be the contributing factor, but I will not discuss that factors in these particular sessions. But our focus will be on the physical activity and also the prevalence of overweight and obese children. Okay, so I have covered this part of the presentations where I bring forward all the evidences that shows that we are not doing good enough in terms of preventing this issue. And also this is not only in Malaysia, it's happened globally. Okay, so since our children and adolescents spend a lot of time in school, so this lead to the another questions whether the physical education sessions in school could provide a sufficient amount of physical activity among school children and nations. So before that we go, what is the role of physical education lesson or session in school? So school represent an ideal context for children physical activity participation, especially during the physical education lessons or recess. Okay, most children and adolescents spend almost half, which is 40 to 45% or 5 to 7 hours of their working hours in school, which means that this context plays a critical role in the development of physical activity and health-related behavior. Okay, also PE lesson is regarded as a valuable source of children and adolescent physical activity participation. In fact, research has shown that during the physical activity lessons, children becoming more active, but the levels of activity still did not achieve the recommended physical activity by WHO, which is the minimum of 60 minutes. So also PE subject is designed to assure the optimum growth and development. This is a very important factors why PE is introduced in the school, because to ensure the optimum growth and development of school children. Apart from that, PE provide the knowledge and skill for children to be active throughout their lifetime. So this is the very, very important role of physical education to make sure that our children and our children have a better future in terms of living a healthy lifestyle. So in Malaysia itself, PE lesson is allocated 30 minutes and 40 minutes per session for primary and secondary schools respectively. And this, with the limited times given that has been bound in our PE curriculums, so do you think that our children can achieve this a minimum of 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity? Okay, so what will be the main issue in physical education? So the main issue is although PE is primary vehicle associated with physical activity promotion in school, yet physical activity levels within PE lesson are generally low. So based on the evidence, okay. In addition, lesson may not occur frequently enough to achieve health gains and student opportunity because PE lesson will often replace with other lessons. So this is the common issues that happens in all schools across Malaysia. Okay, so while increasing the duration and frequency of PE lesson would be ideal, this is not practical considering the challenge associated with the existing crowded curriculum. And of course, we will not able to expand the durations of the lessons from 30 for 45 or 50 minutes. So my focus for today is PE. I believe that some of you might think that we have a lot of platform, for example, during the curriculum, for the COK, for example, after school, before school, but my intention today is focus on the PE. Okay, all right. So other issue, PE classes are not always centered on physical activity that involve everyone's. I believe that everyone's who grew up in Malaysia used to study in a school in Malaysia. We have this kind of experience because some of students do not like to play sports, so they think that so meaning that it does not involve everyone's because sport is requires some skills. Okay, so because of that, student lack enthusiasm to physical education, which may be due to a lack of skill, but even so they are not interested to learn skill. So this is a common that's happened in Malaysia because not everyone loves to play sports and not everyone can manage to learn new skills. Okay, so lack of equipment or faulty equipment also becoming the major issue or other issue that has been reported in research in the context of Malaysia. All right. So now I've covered the first part and the second part. Before that, apologize for my side because I've put the animation for this slide, but it's okay. You can see all the information inside this slide. Okay. So does current physical education session in school can provide the previous question whether we can provide a sufficient amount of physical activity among school children? If that particular questions asked, of course, my answer will be no, because in terms of limitation, in terms of durations, and also based on the issue and challenge that we're facing in physical education lessons. Okay, but if I change the questions, does current physical education session in school can provide an optimal level of physical activity among school children in Malaysia, then my answer will be yes, by focusing on quality rather than quantity. Okay, why I said so, I will lead to the next slide presentations. So quality of PE exercise. We can control the quality of exercise by manipulation of the several variables as below. The intensity and the type of exercise. So this is the variables of exercise that we can manipulate when we're prescribing certain type of exercise. But as I mentioned in the previous slides, of course, in terms of limitations, we cannot modify in terms of the frequency because in our PE lesson in Malaysia school only have 2 times per week. So we have only 2 times per week in terms of frequency, the frequency of the exercise. So the session only 2 times per week. And also in terms of time or durations, it already fixed 30 to 40 minutes. So what we can do now is by manipulating the intensity and time. So therefore, any strategy to optimize activity and fitness in school needs to be time efficient and scalable for easy implementations. Then, before we go to the type of exercise that we should prescribe or we should intervene for our children to make sure that we can reverse the trends of prevalence of physical inactivity and also overweight and obese, we need to know first what is the habitual physical activity pattern in our school children. So based on evidence, our children, based on observations, based on the quantitative and qualitative evidence, it shows that our children's bound into the intermittent type of activity. The activity is sporadic rather than the continuous. Also, they love to do the vigorous type of physical activity, which is high intensity within a short period of time. And of course, this is the most important factors, which is the enjoyment. Okay, so these 4 physical activity pattern should be addressed if we want to implement or if we want to prescribe the specific interventions for our school children. All right, and And because of that, most of the researchers bring high intensity interval exercise as a potential strategy to improve the physical activity. I use the word improve not because this is the quality. It's improve in terms of quality, not quantity. It's not doesn't mean to improve the 60 minute the duration of the exercise, because research have shown that within 4 to 10 minutes of exercise, our children and adolescents can benefit in terms of health and also in terms of mental health. So within these 4 to 10 durations of time, they can benefit from a lot of multiple health benefits, but they need to perform this kind of activity within a high intensity mode. Okay, all right. So what is high intensity? High intensity exercise has been shown as a time efficient strategy for enhancing metabolic health and cardiovascular fitness in children and adolescents, including overweight and obese individuals. So this is one of the examples, protocols that we can use. So basically, HIIE involve short or long work intervals and also interspersed with recovery periods. So this is a repetition type of exercise with the recovery periods. Okay. So usually the exercise is below 4 minutes. Okay. Compared to the continuous type exercise, we need to exercise more than 20 minutes, but this is a high intensity. So we can only manage to do less than 4 minutes. So that considered as a high intensity. So moreover, an infinite number of high intensity exercise protocol can be designed by manipulating the intensity and duration of both work and recovery intervals. So I tried not to be a technical today for my presentation. I just put some of the important informations regarding this work and recovery intervals. So for more informations, you can refer to my works, published paper, all right, in terms of protocol. So why high intensity exercise can be as a potential strategy to improve physical activity? Because it's intermittent nature. It has high intensity, it has low to moderate in the recovery period. So it's more likely to be relevant to the sporadic high intensity habitual activity patterns during childhood and adolescence than as compared to the continuous light and moderate intensity exercise. So therefore, high intensity interval exercise may provide an attractive form of exercise in youth, as the protocol mimics their typical habitual physical activity pattern. And recently, the concept of embedding high-intensity interval exercise within the school day during PE lesson has begun to develop, to be explored by most of the researchers, including me. Okay, and in fact, several school-based high-intensity interval exercise trials have utilized multiple types of high-intensity interval exercise program as a platform to enhance children and adolescent health-related outcomes. Okay. For example, body compositions, blood pressure, and blood profile, and all these health-related outcomes considered as the risk factors of the many chronic diseases. All right. So based on the evidence from my team in UK. This is the latest one. We have collecting almost 54 evidence that has been published and which is available that investigate school-based high-intensity intervention in schools. We found that high-intensity exercise, if we integrate in school base, it involves variety of exercise without any utilization of special equipment. Example, running exercise or game-based high-intensity interval exercise. So this is one of the advantage of high-intensity exercise, which is low cost. We don't have to purchase any special equipment. And equipment is one of the issue and challenge that have been facing in our physical education lessons. So this is an example of protocol that's been used, sprint type protocol. The particular or the students only need to run within 10 seconds sprint. Also, whether they also be asked to exercise within 1 minute work interval and then also 1 minute recovery interval. So this considered as a time efficient because in my previous slide, I have highlighted that the issue related to the physical education lesson is the time, the durations, the limitation, and the major issue that limitations. So that's why this can be used to improve the quality of our physical activity. And then the frequency, by performing 2 times per week of the physical educations, they can produce the desirable health benefits within 5 to 12 weeks of interventions. Okay, so meaning that within a short period of time, the health interventions produce the desirable health benefits as the intentions, of course, to reverse the trends of the negative trends of the prevalence of the overweight and obese. In fact, up to 16 weeks, there is an improvement in terms of body composition, weight, the body fat percentage, weight circumference, a lot of other factors, and of course blood glucose. So this is an advantage that has been produced and has been investigated by majority of the researchers related to school-based high-intensity interval exercise. So the Combi is one of my team in research in UK, and also there is my supervisor and co-supervisor also involved with these studies, these latest studies. But mainly the scenario is in UK, but there is no such difference gap between the scenario in UK as well and in Malaysia. Okay, and another advantage of school-based high-intensity interval exercise is previous high-intensity-based studies have shown that high-intensity interval exercise can elicit greater exercise enjoyment and pleasurable feelings. So these two factors are important because these two factors has been shown to associated with the future engagement towards activity behavior in adolescents. So if our children and adolescents have this kind of feelings, enjoyment, pleasurables, the probability of the continued and engagement of this kind of exercise will improve. So they might continue to join or to perform this kind of high intensity exercise. So this is a few studies conducted by me during my PhD studies. So perceptual responses consist of the enjoyment, the feelings, individual feelings. We found that compared to the high intensity and moderate intensity interval exercise, the children and adolescents prefer to do high intensity. They more enjoy to do the high intensity compared to moderate intensity. Maybe some of the reason that they like to do the high intensity because they boost up their confidence levels after they completed the high intensity interval exercise. Even though there is a challenge in terms of doing the high intensity, they feel they can perform and manage to finish all the protocol. Compared to moderate intensity, they feel that they are boredom. They feel boring to perform because it's too low for them. And then the next study performed the perception and correlation to high intensity interval exercise. Does work intensity matter? So I manipulate the intensity of the protocol, and we found that we should prescribe the intensity within 80 to 90% of the maximum effort. I will show you the next slide. Okay, so also this is the one of my studies. So total I have more than 3, but I just include the relevant study to these particular sessions. So basically this is the basic guidelines from my studies. So introduction phase, if we want to implement the high intensity in school, the protocol should be like this, basic guidelines. So 4 to 5 repetition of 1 minute of walk interval, recovery interval for 60 seconds for 75 seconds, and the intensity from 50% to 90% of maximum heart rate. It's an increasing pattern. We start with slow first and then we increase the intensity. So this can be done within 2 to 3 weeks. And after following the 3 weeks, we have a progression phase. We can increase the repetitions from 5 to 6 to 8. And the recovery interval, of course, will be the same. And the intensity also should be increased because the familiarity in terms of the protocol has been achieved by the students during the introduction phase. Remember, bear in mind, too intense exercise will lead to displeasure, feelings, and lack of enjoyment. Those does lead to poor exercise adherence. And this progression phase can be conducted within 4 to 12 weeks of exercise. Apart from that, the delivery of high intensity can be in the form of single exercise. For example, just now I show you the running, or sometimes we can use the cycling, but of course, school will not have a specific gym. Maybe some school have a gym, but most of school doesn't have any built specific gym in school. So we can implement the game-based form of exercise. So one of the high-intensity interval exercise mode or variety that can be implemented in the school-based setting is a traditional games, which is a non-sport type of activity. Okay, so basically traditional games are simple in design and implementation, suitable in all weather conditions with low cost space, time, and equipment, but still capable of optimizing physical activity. Again, capable of optimizing physical activity comparable to the playing organized sport, for example, by playing football or soccer or other kind of sports. So traditional games are not constrained by strict rule and specific skills. So this is very important because this game can increase students' physical self-efficacy, students' feeling of inclusion and engagement in physical activity. They boost up the confidence levels of the students when we compare to other sports kind of activity because they require specific skills. All right. Moreover, incorporating traditional games within PE lesson in school may facilitate students' engagement in physical activity regardless of individual sports orientations. Okay. And the most important thing is the central to any traditional game is emphasis on fun enjoyment rather than competitions. And traditional games are typically intermittent, so this is the in line with the habitual physical activity pattern in children and adolescents. So because of that, this is the recent study conducted by my team in Malaysia. Over 600 students have joined these studies across school in Kelantan, around 5 schools in Kelantan. So we have conducted the interventions of the traditional games in children during the physical education sessions. Okay, so we in these studies we intended to measure or quantify the intensity of the exercise. So we have selected 5 selected traditional games known as bola beracuns, bola baling, gala panjang, belalang belatuk, and police and thief. And we found that these traditional games mimics the interval type of exercise, which because it involves the high VPA is a vigorous physical activity, so it also known as a high intensity and also moderate physical activity. So majority of students spends within 4 to 5 minutes of high intensity exercise, which is sufficient for them in terms of quality of physical activity, is sufficient for them to improve the health benefits. And also they also spend in moderate physical activity. So in this kind of traditional games, the pattern of activity is intermittent. All right. So basically, in my study, we control the playing size, okay, by using the badminton court size, 20 minutes playing time, and 2 groups, 5 for each group. You can do more, but you can expand the playing size, okay. And this is the examples this is one of the moments that we have during our data collections. So the students wore the accelerometer. I show you this is the accelerometer. So the device used, this is the device, the objective measure, the device used like a heart rate monitor. This is considered as a physical activity monitoring tools that we use to measure or to quantify the physical activity levels of the participants. All right. So they need to wear the accelerometer, and then they will play for 20 minutes, and no direct supervision from the researcher. So they will play by their own until 20 minutes. Okay, no specific or no strict rules unless the rules is bound to the specific game itself. All right. So this is overall overview. I hope that we managed to address all the three parts. We have answered this question whether the current physical education session in school provides sufficient amount of physical activity, and why high intensity can be a potential strategy and can be implemented in school. Okay, so the take-home message for today's presentation for today's session is the prevalence of overweight, obesity, and physical inactivity among children and adolescents aged between 5 to 19 has risen dramatically. So in school setting, integration of high intensity during PE lessons may provide a good platform to optimize. So I'm using the optimize, okay, physical activity in overweight, obese children and adolescents. Therefore, high intensity can be an alternative strategy to reverse the negative health-related trends and enhance health and social well-being in children and adolescents based on the current evidence. And I think this slide marks the end of my presentations. And if you have anything to ask, of course, you can ask after my presentation. And if you have more information that you need to know, and of course, you can follow up with me later on. All right. I think that's all for me. Puan Ain, get back to you.
Okay.
Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Adam Abdul Malik, for your insights on how HIIE can be used as an alternative strategy to overcome obesity in our schools today. Based on your data, it's not a very healthy condition at this point of time for our children, yeah, by CNUTs. So, and of course, as educators, we should look into perhaps how we can integrate the ideas of PA strategy into our PE lesson, yeah, ladies and gentlemen. So, we have a few questions here, Dr. Adam. Shall we address the first question?
Sure.
Can you hear me? Okay. The first one is from Puan Rodaya Abdul Manaf. Okay, when we talk about obesity, so it does not bring forth the feel-good hormones, you see. So the question, I translated it from Bahasa. Her question, the gist was how to overcome the assumptions of body shaming among children when the teacher is sharing about obesity in the classroom.
All right. I think that's a very good question because I think the question itself is challenging to answer.
Yeah, it's very true.
Because everyone, as an individual, as a human being, if we look something that it's not normal to us, we try to bring that as an issue. Okay, based on my experience to address this issue, actually, we as a teacher itself, I think first the overweight and obese is a global issue. That we should know. That's the first thing that we need to address. And second things, try to put your message, or if you put some example, or if you want to bring some message to your students, try to put in a positive way. For example, okay, remember this. If you are overweight and obese, children and adolescents, it doesn't mean you will be that in that what you call situation in future. So you can change that because there's a lot of negative factors if you stay in that conditions. In fact, first we need to make sure that they need to know that the fitness must come first. Then if you can improve the fitness at the end of the day, for sure they will bring the improvement in terms of the self-confidence, because evidence have shown that someone with overweight but high intensity, the mortality rate, the death of rate is much higher compared to the normal one. So as a teacher, you need to put the positive perspective
over mortality.
They need to put the positive perspective when they want to share about that issue. That's my answer. I hope that I answered the questions.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Yeah, a very positive attitude towards whatever that we are sharing. Yeah. All right. Then we have a second question from Nurul Faiza binti Muhammad Nordin. This is how the question is like. How can we encourage the obese children to control their own diet since parents are both working? Shall we?
All right.
All right.
I'm, as a parent myself, also not controlling my kids' diet. Okay, this is, I think this is not a good, what you call, a good practice for we as a parents to control our kids' diet. This is a not good
Mm-hmm.
practice because we as parents should encourage them. Don't eat. This is the what you call. This is a bad kind of. This is a bad nutrition. This is a good nutrition. But as a parents, don't limit your kids to eat. If they want to eat, go for it. But you as a parents, for example, if you want to buy at the mall or if you want to buy groceries, don't buy a lot of chocolate. Okay, good, show the good example because as parents we are role model. Of course we are working, but at the end of the day we have house to live in. We are share the same place for living, so we need to show a role model. If you want to eat something that we love, show that this is how we should eat. So this is
Yeah.
how, this is the proper way of eating. That's my comments, my response to that questions.
Okay. Thank you, Doc. There's the one last question. If you can take one more, I think we can take one more, yeah, before we close the session for today. Does it mean that when school children are obese, it will jeopardize the development of the nation in the future? So, what can we do as educators to ensure our school children are healthy, to optimize
Okay.
our education in the future? That's the last
Okay,
question.
as I mentioned, it's not directly influence
Mm-hmm.
our nation as a whole, but because we know that from time to time, from year to year, I'm not surprised to see the increase. The trend is will be increasing from year to year. In fact, if you ask me 10 years from now, we will have much higher percentage of the prevalence of overweight and physical inactivity. But the issue is now whether if we put that way, for example, factors, for example, if that particular students in terms of issue related to the poor academic performance, because this is the evidence shows that individual with poor body composition, high, overweight, obese, they will perform bad in academic, and of course it will lead to these psychosocial problems, for example like the depression, stress, bullying. So this kind of mental healthy, the physical healthy will also bring of course to their next stage of life. Okay, so meaning that it same time as a person itself, they will go to the next phase as a parents. Then they as a role model, it shows the same thing. This is just like a cycle. So it burden, for example, if lot of weight obese, it will lead to multiple risk chronic disease, and in fact, it will affect our financial burdens in terms of hospitalizations, in terms of what they call someone with mortality rate, and it will happen. So we don't want that happen. So this is how the only factors or the only approach that we can do by intervene something. Of course, we have a lot of factors. For example, physical activity, proper dietary intake. So these two factors
Yeah.
should be included in our intervention later on. All right,
Okay.
that's my.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Doctor. I think time is catching up with us. So this concludes our webinar session for today. Thank you all for watching, and I'd like to once again thank our speaker, and not to forget our technical team at IPG-KBA, Mr. Satya, Mr. Daini, and Mr. Fazi, and the team from Educational Technology and Resources Division, BSTP, the Ministry of Education Malaysia, namely the producer, Dr. Suras Kanagasabai, the studio director, Mr. Muhammad Azian Muhammad Sofyan, the webmaster, Mr. Muhammad Farid Muhammad Fuad Oi, and the Sri Maya, Miss Nurul Ain Azman, and of course, all the viewers who are with us today. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join us again for our next webinar to be held on Monday, the 10th of April, and we're going live at 10 a.m. Malaysian time. This is going to be the 15th of our 18th series. And we have Dr. Malati Balakrishnan from Institute of Teacher Education, International Languages Campus, Kuala Lumpur, to share another exciting topic. So till then, jumpa lagi, see you again, and goodbye from Malaysia. Signing off.